Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this April 22nd, 2015 edition of Nightcast. Our opening story for tonight, friends, we actually don't have video for this. I wish we did, but I do want to tell you about it. It's the type of thing we usually open our program with. 4 people have died and around 200,000 left without power after heavy storms hit New South Wales in Australia. The weather there has caused millions of pounds of damage in Sydney and forces the world's largest coal port in Newcastle to shut down. Also weather-related in tonight's news, Calbuco volcano erupts in Chile, sending smoke and ash into the sky. Again, we don't have video on that one either, friends. The opening story for which we do have video relates to the second seal from Revelation, war and rumors of war. Saudi Arabia have accused Iran of using the conflict in Yemen and the Houthi rebels to create a pro-Shia Yemeni Hezbollah. The Saudis had suspended their bombing campaign, but airstrikes have resumed in Yemen's third city. It's continuing between the ousted government and rebel forces as humanitarian efforts increase to bring relief to those stranded by the fighting. We do have video. Lena Sinjab reports from Riyadh.
The price of war. 4 weeks on, homes destroyed, streets bombed, and hundreds of lives lost. Yemenis are desperate for the violence to end. Here in Riyadh, the government says it has achieved its military objectives. They say it's time for a different kind of operation, but they reserve the right to use force. And reports say airstrikes resumed in Taz, Yemen's third city, against Houthi fighters. Yemeni President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi addresses the nation from Riyadh. He says Yemen is going through terrible time due to divisive powers internally and externally. The Saudis claim Iran is trying to dominate Yemen through the Houthi rebellion. The Saudis say Iran is arming the Houthis and want them to become a Yemeni Hezbollah, the pro-Iranian armed Shia movement in Lebanon. Iran says that Houthi rebels dominated many provinces and questions what did the Saudis achieve. But in Saudi, the views are different.
There is a great sense of patriotism here in Riyadh. Almost everyone I spoke to agrees with the government's action against the Houthis in Yemen. Many believe it's time for the kingdom to act to stop Iran expanding in the region.
There is a big Yemeni community in Saudi. These men say they want the violence to end in their country, but Yemenis need to agree the best way to do it. This restaurant, a replica of Yemeni-style homes, is a meeting place for the community in Riyadh. Its owner, Bandar al-Jabiri, has lived here for years.
The attack that happened is not against the Yemeni people. It is against the Houthi militias who carry Iranian influence. They are corrupt and they are damaging government institutions. They have violated the legitimacy.
Back in Yemen, the scene is devastating. A country that already suffers severe poverty now is living the wounds of war. It will take more than a political deal to restore life there. Lena Sinjab, BBC News, Riyadh.
All right, friends, as I mentioned in the opening, this story with video relates to the second seal from the book of Revelation. Let's pull our chart forward. You'll see in the second column there's a red horse at the top, a number 2, and the word red. And the second seal in Revelation is depicted by a red horse. And the activities of this red horse are described in the Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In Matthew 24, Mark 13, and in Luke 21, where the Gospel writers wrote up what Jesus Christ said of these seals when Christ spoke in plain language to describe them. And in the case of the second seal, the red horse, Christ said it represents war and rumors of war and world war by saying nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And if you look over on the chart, we've got the first 5 of the 7 seals pictured on this chart, are graphically illustrated on this chart. The 5th one on the far right side is labeled number 5, and Great Tribulation at the top of it. That's supposed to be a guillotine where somebody's head is chopped off. And that's one of the big things of the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, the time that Jesus Christ described in plain language as the time of Jacob's trouble. He said it's a time of trouble so bad that no time since the beginning of the world has ever been as bad as what's coming. No, nor ever will be. It'll never be as bad again after it's come and gone, thankfully. But it's still yet future to happen in the future yet. And when it does happen, let's go out to our studio shot for a moment and then go over my shoulder to the depictions here of the right in the middle there. Let's see if I can get to that. Yeah, let's zoom in on this crown. This slide depicts what will be happening during the Great Tribulation. It'll be the time of Jacob's trouble, a time of, like Christ said, trouble so bad, nothing's been as bad as what's coming since the beginning of the world. No, nor ever shall be. It'll be the time of round 3 of World War. It'll be the time of a great martyrdom, much greater than the martyrdom that Fox wrote about in Fox's Book of Martyrs. In fact, as it has been well stated, the coming martyrdom will make that past martyrdom look like just nothing in comparison. It'll be the time that the Philadelphia era of God's church is flown, as Christ described it in Revelation, through visions to John on an island, the Isle of Patmos. He said that we'll be flown on 2 wings of an eagle. Now, that can be literal or it can be figurative. That can mean via airplanes, physically, or it could even mean via, like was done in the past with one prophet, it could be on chariots of fire. But however it's done, God will fly those who he describes in Luke 21:36, who are accounted worthy to escape. He'll fly them to a place that in Daniel chapter 11, verses 40, 41, 42, he'll fly them to an area that is described as being, that escapes the king of the north, who's then the beast power, the 7th and final head of the Holy Roman Empire, the beast, the dictator, the emperor, who will wear this crown of the Holy Roman Empire that you see pictured in the middle of this slide. He'll wear this crown for the 7th and final revision of the Holy Roman Empire. He'll wear that crown for the last time, that big gawky crown. I've seen that in person on display at the Royal Treasury in Vienna. Big gawky thing. In fact, they say it can be worn on the head and maybe is placed there just during a ceremony for a brief moment. But to wear that thing all day would probably break a person's neck. And so what they do is they suspend it by wires from the ceiling and just let it float hanging above the head of the emperor's throne. And this 7th and final emperor will be, as we mentioned, as called by the Bible, a beast. He'll work in consortium, in association with what the Bible calls a false prophet, who many of you who study Bible know that will be the final pope. And the popes have always worked in conjunction with the head of the Holy Roman Empire. They usually conduct the coronation ceremony, during which the emperor is crowned, and usually in Frankfurt, Germany, in the Emperor's Hall, or the Kaiser's Hall, as it's called in German. It'll also be a time when God's two witnesses are bringing a certain very dramatic and miraculous testimony around the world. We don't know who they are yet. That moment hasn't come just yet. But that thankfully, for those who need a breather, I'm including myself, even though we pray, "Thy kingdom come," sometimes you're kind of glad, whew, this moment hasn't come yet. This is going to be a very serious moment. People are going to have to give up. Even those who are accounted worthy are going to have to give up whatever luxuries you may have at the moment, and so, boop, you're going to be off into a wilderness place. But it'll be a place that's protected, that God promises protection over. Read about, and you can see where that area is. It triangulates. I don't have the slide to show you at the moment. I can put that up on the wall so we can go in on it anytime we want to. It triangulates in an area just east of a waterway between Lake Tiberias and the Dead Sea, just east of Israel, kind of into the land of Jordan, and it's described in Daniel 11 as being the land of the children of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. And all of that's just east of that waterway I just described to you, east of Israel, in kind of Jordan land over there. Now, all right, I wanted to just give you a little mention of what we use as criteria for our program. And again, it relates to what you see on this chart. And this next story kind of relates to the fifth seal, that fifth seal again being the Great Tribulation, as we showed you on that slide with the picture of the crown of the Holy Roman Empire. One of the activities, one of the eventualities, the things that will be happening during that fifth seal, during that Great Tribulation, there will be a seventh and final head of the Holy Roman Empire. That empire will be revived one last time, and it will be revived by 10 kings, 5 from the east, 5 from the west, as depicted by, well, let's come for a moment, and while I'm mentioning that, let's scoot up to that statue that you see up above my head. The time of the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, is the same time period that was described by Daniel to King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 7 when he was talking. Well, let me back up. No, actually, it was in Daniel 2 when he was talking about this great image and mentioning how King Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, and after him would come. You know what I should do? Let me go back out, because I kind of stuttered on this the other night, and if we put this chart back up on the screen, and if I leave it where you can see it instead of zooming in on it, let's see, I can bring it full screen where we still keep the whole slide up here. On the left side of this, you see the head of gold representing King Nebuchadnezzar during the Chaldean Empire. Then the breast and arms of silver that depicts the second world-ruling empire that in Daniel 2 was pictured in that great image by arms and breast of silver. But in Daniel 7, they were pictured by a bear and bear's paws. And this, all good Bible students know, represents the second world-ruling empire, the Persian Empire. Then the belly and thighs of brass are equivalent to from the belly and thighs of brass from Daniel 2 are equivalent to the image in Daniel 7, where it's depicted as a leopard with 4 heads, picturing the empire of Greece, where Alexander the Great gave his power over to 4 generals after him. And those 4 heads picture those 4 generals, the division of the kingdom, the third world-ruling kingdom after Alexander the Great, and after they conquered Persia, which is modern-day Iran. And Iran would love to move back into position as a world ruling power as they once had during that second era of great world ruling empires. So it's in their blood. It goes all the way back to that second world ruling empire. Then Daniel told King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 2, that bottom image you see there in the left side, those are two legs of iron. And that gets down to the Roman Empire. And those legs ran from a good 1,260 years. Roman Empire had a continuous run unbroken, then went into the abyss for a while. And when it comes back up, now we have to scoot to the bottom of that chart to see the toes, but the feet and toes of these two legs of iron are described by Daniel as being part clay and part iron, part common clay and iron, which don't mix. Come back out and we'll, let me go here and we'll zoom up to that, to those feet again. The feet of the great image extending from the legs of iron, the feet are part iron and common clay. And that's describing the government that will exist in our day today, in our modern times, once United Europe or United States of Europe comes together in a complete federation, 5 nations from the east, 5 from the west, made up even within each territory, even within the west and within the east. Those 5 won't get along with one another in the east, and those 5 in the west won't get along with one another. Because on each foot they are pictured as being part iron and part common clay, or miry clay as it's called in the King James Version, but that just means, miry clay just means common clay. And common clay and iron don't mix, meaning they don't get along. And the east and west don't really get along, but for 1 hour, for one short moment, not literally an hour, it's just a poetic way God is saying, for a short time, they'll give their power, those 10 regions or nations or country states, whatever, rebordered, however they're going to be when it finally comes down very soon now, with the help of the Pope. This current Pope has already been asked to come over and speak before a European Union assembly. And whether it's this Pope or another Pope, they can change popes very quickly. And who the beast will be, we don't know yet. But when it does come, it's pictured by these 10 toes from the 2 feet. And those 10 toes give their power to this 7th and final hit of the Holy Roman Empire. And then all hell breaks loose. And there's only one place in the whole world that's outside the reach or flowing over of the beast. And that's that area I mentioned to you that's described in Daniel 11, verses 40, 41, 42, that triangulates just east of Israel. And, when you watch world news, we're sometimes, I think, maybe saying, Father, the news is such now that I think I'd like to just check out early. Let me get a ticket and go get myself over to that area. I'll find out exactly where you're going to make it when it finally comes down and try to get over there. Won't work that way, friends. That God says only those who are accounted worthy will escape to that place. You'll, even if you try to get over there early, you'll wind up being killed by some Muslim, or a snake will bite you, or something will happen. It just won't work if you try to get yourself there. But related to this 5th seal and the European Union, because it's the European Union that is going to eventually shape into 10 nations, 10 regions, 5 from the east, 5 from the west, that are going to give their power to this final beast who will be crowned by a pope. And so we watch things related to the European Union. And this next story relates to something related to the European Union and Italy. Italy wants the European Union to take more responsibility for dealing with the large amount of migrants arriving in their country. Thousands have traveled from North Africa to Italy, some of them whom were rescued by the Italian Coast Guard while attempting to cross the Mediterranean. We've got video on that with Katja Adler reporting from Rome.
Breathing in a new country, a new continent, a new reality. They arrived again in their hundreds today. The old, the very young, and the not even born. For them, a sense of relief and joy.
Thank you, Italia.
They've cheated death at sea, left persecution behind at home. Thousands more are queuing up to do the same. Italy says this can't go on. Speaking before Parliament ahead of tomorrow's emergency summit, the Italian Prime Minister demanded a comprehensive political and financial solution, not an emotional reaction, from Europe and all its member states.
The people of Italy want their government to put the rest of Europe under pressure. Italians feel they're struggling to cope between a deep economic downturn here on the one hand and what their media have dubbed the migrant invasion on the other. They want help now.
This run-down neighbourhood just outside Rome has become famous for social unrest. Migrants are sent to holding centres across Italy after arriving by boat. Most end up in poor areas like this, where unemployment is high and tolerance for foreigners low. There were riots here recently. Populist anti-immigration politicians here, as elsewhere in Europe, are making significant gains.
We are ending up hosting migrants in hotels across Italy. This when 4 million Italians are unemployed. We've done our bit. Europe now has to wake up.
Europe is becoming ever more aware. Most migrants coming to Italy leave again pretty quickly, preferring to head to richer countries. Like these Afghan 15-year-olds being looked after by Save the Children in Rome. They asked us not to film their faces. They hope to slip invisibly across the continent. Where do you want to go?
Sweden, UK, Germany.
You want to be with your family in the UK?
Yeah, because from here to France and to Calais, then England. By getting into a car, the car will go into a ship and cross the border.
They are called the children on the move. They know that the situation in Italy is quite hard. There is economic crisis, and it could be difficult to find a job, start an integration path. So they just want to pass through Italy and reach other countries, Germany, Sweden, and the UK, for example.
The face of Europe is changing. Too fast for some. But the recent surge of migrants arriving, dying in European waters demands urgent action. So it's decision time, but also a moment for soul-searching. Katja Adler, BBC News, Rome.
And friends, all of that sudden changing and all those people migrating in, that's the kind of thing that could cause things to snap together very quickly. So, and I wanted you to be aware of that and the potential for strife it's causing in the EU countries there. This next story is one that, I was mentioning a moment ago that I might like to, once in a while you think that's kind of just joking a little bit, but not really entirely. Sometimes I've said to God, Father, I'd like to just check out early. Can you go ahead and get me over there to the Middle East? And let me just wait for all of these things that are coming about to play on out. This next story is one that kind of prompted me to do some thinking like that today, and even praying like that before God, and it may do the same for you. New York's Transit Authority, or Transport Authority, is reviewing its options after a judge's ruling. That's the caption with this opening photograph, or only photograph we have with this story. A judge has ruled that New York City buses must display a controversial ad that, perhaps you've heard of this just has really slammed into the news, that controversial ads refers to, this is almost unbelievable. I saw this story, I said, I don't believe it. But on the one hand, I said, I don't believe it. On the other hand, the news is so crazy today, you just say, well, yeah, you know, that's the way things are going. You just say, you know, instead of saying who'd have thought it like you might have years ago, you say, well, yeah, that figures. These controversial ads refer to Muslims killing Jews. Yeah, you heard me right. New York's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA, had opposed the advertisement, arguing it could incite terrorism and violence. Yeah. But Judge John Koeltl, how do you pronounce that? Judge John rejected the argument and said the ad was protected under the U.S. Constitution, which enshrines the principle of free speech. You know, they protect certain free speech and other things they call hate speech, and you can't say it. How you like that for the way our judges rule? Anyway, back to this story, friends. I'm just going to read this to you here. The ad is paid for by the American Freedom Defense Institute, paid for by the American Freedom Defense Initiative. It has already been displayed on public transport in Chicago and San Francisco. The advert showing a threatening-looking man with his head and face wrapped in a scarf next to a quotation attributed to a music video from the militant Palestinian group Hamas. The quote says, "Killing Jews is worship that draws us close to Allah." The advert asked, "That's his jihad. What's yours?" Judge Koeltl, Koeltl, said that although he was sensitive to security concerns, the MTA had underestimated the tolerance of New Yorkers and overestimated the potential impact of the ad. It strains credulity to believe that New Yorkers would be incited to violence by, and I'm quoting the judge, friends, I'm not saying this myself. The judge is saying it strains credulity to believe that New Yorkers would be incited to violence by ads that did not incite residents of Chicago and San Francisco, he said. He delayed enforcing his ruling for 30 days so the MTA could decide whether to appeal. MTA spokesman Adam Lisberg said they were, quote, disappointed in the ruling and are reviewing our options. The American Freedom Defense Initiative is run by controversial blogger and activist Pamela Geller. It is listed as an anti-Muslim group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, a civil rights group. And friends, that is it for this Wednesday night. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow night, Thursday night, with our next edition of Nightcast, the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying thanks for joining me tonight, friends. So long and good night.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.
You people in Hawkins, Texas, get your planes out of the hangar and be ready to go.